Hello, welcome into the harvest. I'm Andrew Stroud. Happy 2023. It is a new year, and I am joined today on the show, as I often am, by my good friend and co-host, Abigail Wilson. Abigail, how are you?
I'm good, Andrew. You and I have not been together in so long on this podcast, so it's really fun to be back together. It's original.
It is fun. So much has happened. In fact, I had to look this up, Abigail. Do you remember the last show that we were on together like this?
It was like June or something.
It was June 30th.
Okay, good. I didn't look it up, so I feel very good that I remember that.
See, I thought maybe we had been on a show in the fall because you were on the show.
Oh, right. Yes, with Karis.
With Karis. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I guess I just thought somewhere in there we had been on a show together, but I thought, well, maybe not.
We've just been in meetings together. Like, if only you guys out there listening could be in our Zoom meetings, then you would have seen us together. But yes,
good point. Not officially. We've seen each other and had many a conversation, but we haven't been on a show like this. So it's good to see you again.
Yeah, you too. And for the podcast world, we are just the same as we all have always been, but life has happened for us. So here we are to talk about it.
Life has definitely happened for us. For instance, even though it's been 6 months, you are a world away, literally. So right now we're recording. It's 9 a.m. here on the West Coast. What time is it where you're at, and where are you?
It is 6 p.m. and I am in Germany. So if you're watching us on YouTube, you will see that I brought all my rainbows with me from my previous office. So it's very similar, and it's really great to be settled in. But it took a while because guess what? It takes a lot to move from Texas to Germany. Maybe more than I realized.
Right. Well, that's what we want to do on the show today. We really wanted to give some life and ministry updates to our larger community, just to let them know what's going on with us as we start the new year. We always love hearing from you. So if you want to share with us in response what's going on with you and how we can be praying for you, then you can either send us an email or connect with us on social media. We'd love to hear from you as well. But why don't we start with that, Abigail? Why don't we start with just a quick update? We started to catch up a little bit about how the new year's starting, but just with our larger community, what's going on in your life and ministry, and then I'll share a little bit about what's going on with us here in California.
Yeah, so my husband, Brett, took a job in Germany, which is very shocking and surprising to me as his wife. I talked a little bit about this in past episodes, so hopefully that's not news to anyone, but we packed everything up in like 2 months and made our way over to Germany. And it's been real fascinating to adjust to a new country. Before we left, Brett was like, we are still going to be doing house church, Abigail, like, just so you know. And I was like, oh, okay, good to know. I didn't know there were other options. I just we're so in this point. So that was an interesting thing for us to then start doing in a new country with new people and just a new community to get to know. So it's been very slow. Luckily, we always have 3 members that always show up to church because they live with us and aren't there our children. So that's been very helpful when it's been a slow start here in Germany. Mm-hmm. But we left behind a really fabulous church in San Antonio, and still are very much just a part of their like cheerleading squad from Germany. So that's really, really cool to see. And it has just been like a whirlwind of just trying to figure out what the new season holds. I don't know, what direction does this say? Can you read this in the background, Andrew, or is it backwards?
No, it reads the right way. It says impossible.
That's right. That was the word that God gave me for 2022. And I thought it was going to be like a real cool spiritual journey, like God doing the impossible. And he did. He took me to a whole different country and I was shocked. And that to me is pretty impossible. So I left it up. I'm going to take it down and put this next year's word up there. But I thought for the show, I should leave it there. I will say the other impossible thing that happened, and I'm just going to go ahead and like announce my news, Andrew. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Okay. So, the other impossible thing for me anyway was I am going to be giving up my position here at Into the Harvest, being on our staff. This is impossible because I really didn't want to do it. I had to argue with God about it for like a few days, maybe longer, but definitely a few days. But I think now that I've made the decision, I'm seeing more and more that God's going to really be doing some cool things with Into the Harvest without me, and also with us here in Germany. So many impossible things. I don't love it.
Yeah, most of you know that Abigail has been our editor-in-chief. Really, you've worn a lot of hats over the years.
Thank you. Thanks for acknowledging that, Andrew.
But your official title has been editor-in-chief of our blog over at intotheharvest.org. You've done an amazing job with that. You've written a lot of the articles at the blog, sharing from your experience and wisdom of following Jesus and making disciples and doing ministry out of your home and in your neighborhood. So, but you've done a lot of other things. Obviously, we've done this show together. This is the first episode of season 6, which is pretty hard to imagine. So you've been on the podcast. Obviously, we just finished up Advent last month, and you put together an amazing Advent series for us that we've used for a few years now. So, you've done a lot, but in a sense, you're stepping away from those official roles within Into the Harvest as a ministry. But maybe share a little bit about why you believe the Lord is wanting you to take that step at this point, to step away from these official Into the Harvest roles, because you're still going to be doing everything that you've been doing in terms of in your local area. Right.
Yes. Way to ask the hard-hitting questions, the why question. The short answer is what we do here at Into the Harvest. You and I have always been the most important thing was what we are doing on the ground and in the harvest places. And it's one of the things that I am really proud of in regards to Into the Harvest. I know you are doing the things that you say you are doing, Andrew, and you are teaching from a place of living it out. And I really, really respect and love that. And I wanted to follow suit in that, and have tried to be very vulnerable on this podcast and in writing of just what that looks like, but also really get back to the truth of that. But however, in that mix, I think there's always the needing to make sure that our priorities are where they need to be and focused where they need to be. Into the Harvest has always been a delightful icing on my cupcake of I verbally process. Like, I've loved our times on the podcast. I've walked away learning things. And so it's been a real delight for me, especially as a stay-at-home mom. When we started, Andrew, let's just harken back for 2 seconds to when I used to put my 2-year-old into childcare at the YMCA, and then we would record while I was in my car. And those are
this is before we had the video. This is before we had YouTube.
Oh man, I wish we had YouTube then though, because that would have been some good stuff. But it was a real gift to me. And it really blessed me to be able to know that whatever we were going through in our ministry, and just our day-to-day lives, trying to be faithful in the harvest places, that I was needed to be obedient so I could then be truly transparent here at Into the Harvest. So it's been a real blessing to me. That said, I would do my work during my kids' nap times and when they were in school. And so it really didn't get in the way of my other very big priorities, namely my children. So as we said before, it is 6 p.m. right now, which is prime my children time. My kids are going to public school here in Germany, and the adjustment is they've been doing so great, but it's kind of a big deal. And we're just entering into some crazy new seasons as a family, and the evenings are kind of kind of my prime time.
Yeah.
I spend my day in my sweats, and then I do some stretches, and then I go into the evening, and that's when I'm when I need to be on for my family. So
Right.
that was a really big part of it, was just knowing that because of the time change, and when we would need to record, when I would need to record, even if we had guests, most
Mm-hmm.
guests are in the States. And so
Mm-hmm.
would need to also record during this time. And so that was probably the first clue. And then there were, some other things as well. But I was talking to Brett about it earlier, and he was like, the bottom line is that you were obedient. And I think we're going to probably see more and more the reasons. We don't even know all of the reasons yet, but sometimes we just have to be obedient to what we feel like the Lord is leading us to do. And that's
absolutely. That's such a great point. And I don't know what your experience is, Abigail, but oftentimes as my life has played out, I would say that it's the Holy Spirit, but certainly you begin to get this sense that things are a little bit out of balance, or things are that change is coming. And for me, oftentimes I can't even articulate it. I can't necessarily put it in words. Even to myself, when it's first starting, you begin to get this sense that maybe the Lord is leading in a new direction, and you're going to be starting a new chapter. And I agree totally. This show that we did last year, if we went 12 months back, we were talking about 2022 and some of the changes that were coming up. And so over the
have you listened to it? I don't remember what we said.
Well, I only remember because we did a show on me starting to work bi-vocationally. And so
we thought that was going to be the big thing.
It was one of the big things for sure. 2022 was a year, you guys. Dude. I think for both of us, but probably for many people that are listening or watching this, but for the two of our families, for sure, a lot of change, not always easy, but the constant presence of God, I would say, guiding us through that. But God's presence being constant and his promise to guide us, it doesn't mean that it always is crystal clear.
Right.
The why questions that, like you said, those are sometimes really hard to discern. It can be years. I found years later, I can look back and say, like, okay, I can actually see now how that experience and what I was going through, or what we were learning, how that's now bearing fruit. But you often don't get to see that. And so I do think you have to, there's a real sense of trusting God as you go through life. And especially as you make major life changes, like vocational change, going bi-vocational, or for you guys, Brett taking a job in Germany. And then obviously a big shift for you into the harvest has been, I know, like you said, it's icing on the cake, but you've put a lot of time and effort into that icing. So it's not like it's just like a little side project.
But that's fun. I mean, I think we've had a lot of fun in doing it. I think you and I both really love what this is all about, and we're really passionate about it. So it doesn't feel like, some of it felt like work. Like you making me do a podcast, that was real. But I've gotten used to it.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I've learned for sure. Whether it's podcast or blog articles, or when you're trying to produce content to encourage people, and you really have to be consistent. And so there's weeks that it's not fun to record a podcast or to meet a deadline for an article. And it's worth it, but it's not always just this fun experience that you're going through. But on the whole, for sure, this is something that we love to do. We're going to be living this lifestyle anyways. And so being able to share that and hopefully invite others to join us in this lifestyle of following Jesus and making disciples and learning how to live and share our faith in everyday places, that is icing on the cake, because it's something that we're already doing locally. To get a chance to use technology to share it with a lot larger group of people is something that we do enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that it's also interesting to make a decision that affects other people. Like you can't help but think how And that's one of the parts that I cannot see, but I can trust that God is going to do good things with that. So, even, leaving this community in a official capacity is hard for me because I'm like, I just thought of like a good podcast episode just the other day. I need to tell you about it later. But I was like, no, you don't do that anymore. So it's going to be really exciting for me because even, in the last few months, I took a pretty long break and I still got to hugely benefit from Into the Harvest. You were putting out some really awesome interviews. Like some of my favorite ever were in this last season, in season 5. So if you did not get to into any of those kind of the end of the year podcasts that Andrew did, so good. And then Hope over on our social media was really putting out super encouraging stuff that was really helping me. And it sounds really cheesy, but I was like, oh, because this is why people follow this. I am in the harvest and I am benefiting from Into the Harvest. So I am looking forward to being just a full-time follower of Into the Harvest, because in this season, we legitimately need it. And I think that was always our goal, was Into the Harvest was for people maybe who were just trying to labor and didn't have support. And now it's me.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that, because obviously you've been a huge part of Into the Harvest. We started Into the Harvest. I always have a hard time remembering the date, but I always want to say 2018, but maybe it was 2017. But it's been several years, and I'm pretty sure you were the first or second person that I told about it after Cindy, my wife. And you were the first person that I asked to come on the team with me to start this ministry. And you were, you jumped on board with both feet. So it is a really huge, for me personally, it's a pretty big transition moment for Into the Harvest. Just on a personal level. And I know it's going to have an impact for the ministry as well. Although, like you said, we trust that God has, he's got what he's doing through our lives and through this ministry. So I want to talk a little bit about the ministry of Into the Harvest, almost as a reset. Hey, why are we doing this? And where do we see things going here in 2023? But before we get into that, I think what you just shared is so important for people to hear, which is a big part of you stepping away from being editor-in-chief of Into the Harvest and being on the podcast on a regular basis is so that you can be faithful in the harvest. So that really is
funny
that really is the whole point, and you're not disappearing. You're not dropping off the face of the earth. You're still in the harvest. You're still going to be part of this community. We haven't talked about it, but I'm sure that there'll be blog articles at some point where, even if it's just you sharing something from what you're already writing over on your personal blog, or maybe coming on at some point in the future and just updating us on how things are going, you're going to be around, and you're going to be living this same life that we try to promote and talk about. And I mean, I guess it just really shows that I can't multitask right now, which is cool, because that just gives you more credit, Andrew. Andrew went to bi-vocational this year. He's truly supporting his family all the day long, and he's still doing Into the Harvest. I just moved countries and couldn't handle it. So I think it just you just moved countries.
It's just a minor thing, and I just lost the plot. So I can't multitask anymore. It's fine. But we're really glad that you can, Andrew. And everyone out there, take a second and think about how you're supporting Andrew, because it's not easy. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I appreciate that. And actually that's part of why we went bi-vocational. Just to go back is to say, we're talking about being ordinary believers in everyday places. And so over the years, my family has had the great privilege of being sponsored or supported in a full-time capacity, where people give to the ministry of Into the Harvest. And that's literally how I pay my bills. That's how we buy food. And God has been behind that. God has provided for us over the years where our family has never gone without. But we did sense a little over a year ago that, hey, we're talking about this, we're promoting this, but we need to take a step towards being one of those people. Not that we weren't actively sharing our faith in our social circles, but to have the pressures of a regular job, and also to be a light for Jesus, in that workplace. And like you just said, to juggle the scheduling, because that is a big part of what it means to follow Jesus and to represent him, and to keep the main thing. If there aren't other things that are trying to constantly encroach and distract us and to steal away our focus and our devotion, then in a sense, we're not really keeping the main thing. We're just, that's all there is.
There's only one thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And, like just to be honest, like I spent time in prayer this morning, just confessing to God that I do feel like over the holidays and in recent weeks, it's been a real struggle to, like you said, keep the plot. And I don't feel like I've done a great job of doing that. So it's another challenge of presenting content like this, is like your life is still having ups and downs. So it's
right. Yeah. And it's not like, hey guys, we had an off week. Sorry.
Everything's always going great and we're always hitting the bullseye.
Yeah.
But again, that's what we're trying to do, is not only live it, but then be honest and share with you guys.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about the future of Into the Harvest, which is going to be more on me, I guess, since...
Yes, I'll ask you questions.
Yeah, that's good. Well, let me start. You can think of the questions, but just as a refresher for folks, Into the Harvest, the name itself comes from the passage at the end of Matthew, where Jesus looks out and he sees the crowds of people, multitudes of people coming to him. And it says that he was moved with compassion because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without shepherd. And if we just kind of pause the story right there, and we took a step back and we said, okay, Jesus, he came down to earth to announce this message that the kingdom of God is at hand. And here he's got thousands of people, multitudes of people coming to him to hear him, to be healed by him, to see what he's about. This would be like a mega pastor's dream, a mega church pastor's dream, to have thousands of people seeking you out to hear, to learn, to benefit from what you have to offer. And yet it says that Jesus was moved with compassion. And when you study the Greek there, his stomach was in knots. It's a very physical sensation that's being described by Matthew in his gospel. That he was moved with compassion almost doesn't do it justice. Like he was greatly troubled by this. And so it already sets up a strange dilemma in our minds, because we would say, this is a good thing, Jesus. But Jesus sees this as a real problem. And so when he sees these people who are harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd, it says that he turns to his disciples, because they were also with him, the people that he was training and investing in, the 12. He turns to the 12 and he says, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Therefore, pray to the Lord of the harvest that he would send out workers into his harvest. And so really that's kind of the core of what we believe here at Into the Harvest, and what we're trying to promote and help others do is be some of those few workers, be some of the few laborers who have been discipled. Jesus didn't say that to anybody. He said that to the 12, because these were the ones who could actually carry his message and his mission out into the harvest. So he turns to those people and he says, you're the solution to this problem. The solution is not just to continue to have thousands of people come to the expert, which in this case was Jesus. Jesus saw that the solution was ultimately going to be for these yahoos, the 12. Like, that's a huge step down from Jesus, right? Like,
yeah.
But Jesus said, like, you guys are the solution. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. But these workers need to be out. They need to be sent out into the harvest. And so that's always been our mission, is not so much how can we get our groups to grow, even though that's great. We want to see that. But even more so, we want to see God's people developed and matured and equipped so that they can go out into their workplace, their neighborhood, their social networks, and be those few laborers who are representing Jesus to their friends and family and coworkers. So that's still the mission that we're going to be, giving ourselves to. Whether that's on a personal level, we're trying to be those faithful workers out in the everyday places. And then this ministry is all about trying to provide inspiration, ideas, focus, and resources, materials to help others of you who want to be those few workers go out and represent Jesus in the everyday places. So yeah, that's just a reminder that this is why we're doing the show. This is why we have the website. And whatever we do here in 2023, it's going to be built around trying to move us towards that.
Yeah, I love that, Andrew. Also because it has not changed. Right. In the 5 years that we've been, live on your social media feeds, that vision has not changed. And I think that's really shows to how much we believe in that is in fact what this lost world and this lost generation that we're in really, really is in need of. So I think it's really cool that it hasn't changed at all. So if you have been around for a while, that may be something you've heard before, but we can always hear that again. I think for me, the big thing there is to take ownership of that for myself, because I think for most of my life, I was like, that's for the 12 and that's it. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of speak to why we need to take that on to ourselves? Because I'm not one of the 12.
Right. Well, we think about the 12 and it's very easy to put the disciples on a pedestal. They're the apostles, they're the ones upon whom Jesus built the church. And we read the book of Acts, and it's pretty amazing to see how God used them. Even though we actually don't get a lot of stories from the 12. Like there's not much in the scriptures about what happened with Thomas, what happened with Bartholomew, what happened with Philip, where did they go? We get little glimpses from some of them. Most of the story revolves around Peter and John, and then of course the apostle Paul, who wasn't even part of this particular passage out of Matthew 9. But I think that's why it's important to read the Gospels, because when you read the Gospels, like I'm reading in Matthew right now, it's like, man, these guys, they were like us guys. They were very much ordinary people.
I love Peter.
With a lot of flaws. Like I just read how they couldn't stay awake in the garden. And it's literally all Jesus, like Jesus says, my soul is greatly distressed. And of course we're reading it. We know what he's getting ready to face, and he knew what he was getting ready to face. And this was his hour of need. And that's what he says, watch, stay alert and watch with me. Like that's all they had to do. They literally only had to stay awake. And of course they couldn't do it.
No.
So I think it's easy for us to put the apostles on a pedestal and realize that, and believe that we're somehow less, but really that's the whole point, is that God wants to use his people. His power is perfected in our weakness. And so what he really just needs from us is our willingness to step out in faith and join him in this mission that he has for us.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So Andrew, you are now bi-vocational. So you're no longer in full-time ministry. Do you think that it has been a huge, mind-blowing shift? Or is it the same? Like, how does it feel? You did it for a whole year.
Well, it's definitely not the same. The same. Which I'm glad, because that would be a big disappointment if it was shifted over and oh, okay.
No big deal.
I've really enjoyed it. It has been a challenge at times. We had some other things happen this past year within our extended family that required a lot of time and energy from Cindy and I in particular. And so aside from just being bi-vocational, which, some people may not be familiar with that term. So we're kind of part-time in both. We're part-time with Into the Harvest. And so, folks do still give to this ministry and support it. And part of that support helps us. but then I'm also working part-time as a loan officer. And so, so yes, that does require like being much more intentional about scheduling my time and my week, and being much more on top of things in terms of setting priorities. And a lot of times, just like what you were saying earlier, like a lot of times you have things that you really care about, but they might be down the list. They might be number 4 or number 5. And the big thing about setting priorities is that, it helps you keep the main thing. So
Yeah.
I think it's definitely been a challenge, but it's been what I was hoping for.
Yeah. That's
and
cool.
part of what I was hoping for was just the challenge, and to be able to live this life so that when we talk about it, it's a little bit, it's more based on current events and experience than just concepts or
Right.
theology.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot. It's hard to say, I understand what you're going through, when we don't necessarily. And sometimes that's okay. Like, we don't have to experience everything that someone else is experiencing. But you are now really able to speak with maybe even more authority of, how difficult it is, and yet how possible it is, and how the Lord is faithful in that challenge. So it's really, really cool.
Yeah. And of course, there's just the immediate ministry of just trying to be in that workplace setting, and to be a light, and to have those conversations, which has been a lot of fun. So like, aside from just like experiencing the challenge of time, and, there's the actual, representing of Jesus, and trying to be a light in the darkness, seeking to be a light in the darkness, which has been very fulfilling, very meaningful for me. And it's been something that I'm grateful that the Lord has given me a chance to do over the past year, and continue to do here in 2023.
Yeah, that's true. I had not even thought about how, in a lot of ways, in doing Into the Harvest, just like to, push back the curtain, a lot of what we have to do is think about like numbers and views and followers, and, the effect. Like, is the input that we're putting in worth it? And yet, in a lot of ways, this year, you and I both, the Lord has expanded our pool of people. He's just done it in our everyday life. It's not all out on the internet. So that's pretty cool. Hey, everybody, we've all got real lives.
Yeah. And you know what? Same thing there. Like, so even just like, I'm a very structured person. Like, I've learned this about myself over the years, but I have to be now. I have to have mental buckets. And it's not that I make people projects, but I have to think about my life in buckets. Otherwise, I just, there's too much going on. There's too many people. And I want to be faithful in these relationships that the Lord has given me. But, I have local relationships. I have family relationships. I've got work relationships. And so I think part of just being faithful and being a good steward is to be thoughtful about the connections and the relationships that the Lord has given us, to be prayerful about those different people. And then to try to, again, set priorities, so to discern, like, Lord, who do I need to focus on? So going into this year, just on a personal level, Cindy and I, we got a little getaway to start the year where we would pray and plan. And we tried to think through just a handful of people here in the local area that are younger than us in life, and younger than us spiritually, that we want to be purposeful about initiating with, reaching out to, and ultimately, hopefully, discipling over this coming year. But we try to be purposeful and intentional about it. We don't just be scattered and random about who we're reaching out to, who we're trying to stay connected to. I don't know if that makes any sense, but all of it is, all of it is requiring us to be thoughtful.
Yeah, I think there comes a point, and I hope almost everyone has gotten this, that we don't just get to wake up and fly by the seat of our pants and just react to whatever like flies at our face. We really do have to be intentional. And intentional is like a word that gets like tossed around maybe way too much. Like, let's intentionally. And I'm like, oh, must we be intentional? But yeah, actually, in the same way, I did a very similar thing, was like, who are the ladies I want to invest in this year? And one of them, I literally was like, I'm going to need you to pick a day of the week. Like, right. I will give you the day of the week, and you don't always have to use that day of the week, but like, if you don't pick one, like, it's not going to happen. Like, so I think we have to realize, what are the parameters we've got going on, and then really be intentional. Otherwise we will go to sleep tonight and not have done the things that we set out to do. So
or you get really like 4 weeks down the road and you're like, man, I haven't talked to that person. Like that person seemed really interested in learning and growing in their faith. And it's been 4 weeks since I even had a text interaction or a phone conversation with them. So that's what's at stake. Like when we're not thoughtful, when we don't set priorities, or even around relationships, it's very easy for life just to take us, and the other people, of course, life is taking them in a certain direction as well. So you do have to, I think, be thoughtful and make it a point to, I'm trying to use phrases that aren't intentional.
I know.
And
you're doing great. Really
of
think about it.
those relationships. So I'll just drop this here. So there's something Cindy would not want me to share this.
Oh, goody.
Only because
we
it
love
sort
you,
of
Cindy.
Commits us. Yeah. So but we have this idea of doing something that we're going to call the Titus Project. And it's where we take 2 or at the most 3 couples over a 6-month period. And we just purposely mentor and disciple them.
Cool.
In their faith, in their marriage, in their parenting, if they have children, but also just taking them through the book of Titus. Yeah. But it's going to be very, in a sense, it's going to be very structured. We're going to make this a 6-month commitment, and there'll be on a monthly basis. The idea is that we would have dinner with this couple once a month, and then we individually will try to get with them at least twice a month, one-on-one. Wife to wife, husband to husband.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then, of course, working through a certain set of material during that time. But I think that's what's driving that, I believe, is just not so much a desire to be programmatic, because I don't think that that's the way discipleship works or disciple making works. But I do think that there's this balance between having a program and having a plan. I think having a program can be almost a little bit dangerous, because we can start to put our trust in this program. If we just run these people through these steps and these materials, they're going to come out the other end as mature followers of Jesus. But I do think having a plan is important. Having some structure to what it is that you're trying to do. So maybe later this year we'll revisit and see. This is why she wouldn't want me to say it, because we haven't done it yet. So
I love it. I'm so in, Cindy. There's going to be a wait list. So I'm going to need you guys to do it. I know everyone's rushing to their keyboards to be like, how do we get to be able to?
Yeah. Well, this is just like on a personal level, one way that we're trying to figure out how can we live out a certain framework that allows us to be faithful in all these different areas of life and still keep the main thing, which is to follow Jesus and help other people follow him. How can we do it? And so we're just trying to experiment with this framework this year to see how it works. And if it is successful, like I think it will be, then maybe that can be a framework that other people can use. And
that's
benefit.
Really cool. Well, I have been discipled by Cindy. It was awesome. So I feel like, you guys already have a long history of knowing how to do this. However, I like the idea of having a certain time frame to it, and also kind of an intentional purpose for it. And if you and I both came from ministries where discipleship was like a word that's used a lot. We all have it defined. We're like good with it, but a lot of Christian culture is not that way. And so having definition to what we're going to do here is is really helpful for people. And I think more
Right.
people would be excited about it if they kind of know, like, oh, I need to learn about those things. I need to know, have this spoken into my life and marriage and raising kids and work and all that stuff. So
Yeah, I think
cool.
that's another thing that we're up against with this generation. And it's not even really a generational thing. I think it's more of a cultural thing. Like our culture has shifted, society has shifted. It seems to me, where if you just have, you and I also came up in more open-ended approaches to discipleship, where, hey, we're going to share life together,
Yeah.
and we'll get together multiple times in a week. And I don't know if it was that we were younger. I think a lot of times culture and society has just shifted now, where I think people need to have a little bit more structure and a little more idea of what am I getting into. So I don't know. That's another
That's
part
like a
of what,
whole nother topic though. Like, cause
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know if it's a cultural, like we are just used to, I feel like I'm having to teach that, here, like teaching, like just how to hang out with us. Like, and there will not be like an amount of time. But also I've thought, well, maybe it's just Germany too, because most of the Americans were dealing with, that sounded bad. Getting to have relationship with, are, like surrounded by awesomeness, like you could hang out with the Wilsons, or you could go to Paris, and like all of a sudden there's just a lot more at stake. And so, yeah, I feel like there's almost just a learning curve that we're all just up against all the time. But these are good problems to have. And it's exciting to see you guys, even who I feel like have all the answers, still like, trying to tinker at it and see what the Holy Spirit is telling you to do. And so it's cool.
I think this is, it goes back to what you said earlier, that the situation is still the same today. Just as when Jesus said the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few, back in Matthew's gospel, he's still saying that to us today.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that makes this life of discipleship and disciple making, I think, so fulfilling and so meaningful, is that it isn't like you just crack the code and now you just spend the next 20 or 30 years just going through the motions.
Yeah.
Just as we're all called to follow Jesus in our personal lives and in our personal devotion, and that requires us to be willing to make changes like both of us have talked about in our own lives. It's the same way in ministry, that there are going to be different approaches during different seasons with different people. And so I've always felt that disciple making there is a science to it. There are principles that are timeless. And that's why we want to study, especially Jesus, to see how did he do it? Because there are things that we can learn and put into practice that are still going to work. But there's also an art to disciple making, where you have to trust Jesus today to help you figure out, how do you help this person in this situation? And there you have to be faithful, and you have to be attentive to God's leading in the present time, which may be different from how he led you even 12 months ago. Yeah. And so you can't just rest on what worked in the past, which makes it exciting.
It's just not us. The bottom line is it's the Holy Spirit 100% of the time. So one time it works and I'm like, yeah, that's because I really rocked in how I shared the gospel. Like, way to go. I just nailed it. I did it exactly how I was taught. So I'm going to go out there and do it again tomorrow, and it's going to be equally as amazing. And it's just not. And I did it exactly. We can never, there's no, just the, we are underestimating how we are like this tiny, tiny drop in the bucket. He is allowing us to be a part of the work of his Holy Spirit. And all of these things that we're doing, the angels are laughing at us, but getting to be faithful and to get to show up time and time again without knowing what is going to happen is our great joy. It's like the one thing we get to do while we're here on earth. We're going to know what's going to happen in heaven. So just more awesomeness. Spoiler. So yeah, I mean, we're just trucking along, trying to do our best and just really just a lot of praying, right? Like we just
Right.
have to pray, like a ton, because if the Holy Spirit doesn't show up, then my little efforts are going to be.
Yeah. Well, I think I hope people can pick up just on our conversation today that I know for me, I'm just as excited about the ministry of Into the Harvest, and really not Into the Harvest as a thing, as an entity, as a ministry, but the mission of Into the Harvest. I'm just as excited about that today as I have been in years past. Obviously, it's looked different over the past 12 months for both of us. And we're anticipating it's going to look different going forward here in 2023. But we're still going to be living out this lifestyle in our personal lives and in our local areas. And the ministry of Into the Harvest is going to continue. I think I probably should say just a few things about expectations for folks.
Yes.
The blog will not be as consistent as it has been when Abigail was managing that.
Good. I'm glad we're going to notice I'm gone.
Yeah, we will still. So I would encourage folks that if you want to make sure that you're in the loop, then sign up for our newsletter, which you can do at our website. I'll also put a link to it in the show notes here, because we will still put out articles. They'll be a little more sporadic this year. So that's one change that folks will see. We're going to try to be more consistent over on YouTube. So in years past, we've done shorter videos that are more topical, 7 to 8 minutes on specific aspects of following Jesus or sharing your faith or making disciples or studying the Bible. And we're going to try to be more consistent over on YouTube this year with those shorter style of videos. So that's something you can be praying for our team, for me. I would also say that if folks are listening to this and they are skilled and passionate about video editing or even email marketing. Marketing sounds so like we shouldn't be using that word, but basically, like if you know how to use MailChimp and you want to be a part of what we're doing, there are opportunities for other people to be involved in the ministry of Into the Harvest. It's not just like we have this professional team and we've got it all covered. Like if you see what we're trying to do and you feel like you've got skills that could help us, reach out to me. You can email me, Andrew@intotheharvest.org. And it'd be cool to partner with our community to really grow the influence of what we're trying to do. But the podcast is going to be continuing, and I hope that I think we've got some pretty exciting interviews lined up for this year. So we're going to try to continue to do that, to bring people in who also have this vision and are living this out in different places around the world and learn from them. So we'll continue doing that. And then we've been trying to get this off the ground for a few years, Abby, but we're still trying to get our online courses going. And so look for that in the coming months. It's something that our team is still working on. So Into the Harvest is not going anywhere. We're still going to be continuing the ministry here in 2023. And trying to live it out in our personal lives. Now, how about you though, Abigail? Because I know a lot of folks are going to want to continue to stay connected with you. And I know you have some ways where people can do that. Just to put you on the spot, if folks want to continue to follow what's going on in your and Brett's lives there in Germany, what's the best way for them to connect?
That's a great question. Probably I will be continuing to do our family newsletter in this coming year. So we'll put a link to that if you would like to sign up for our monthly newsletter. You can also go to my personal website and subscribe to that. I will be blogging more. Just FYI though, do not expect it to be the same caliber of Into the Harvest writing. And that's why I have to not do Into the Harvest. If I was just going to continue to write and just not write for Into the Harvest, that's ridiculous. No, we're just talking about unedited thoughts of Abigail. So, keep the expectations real low.
Well, I mean,
if I have anything good, I'll send it to Into the Harvest.
So when you say that though, I mean, it's really going to be different in style, right? I mean,
yes.
With Into the Harvest,
like talking to me.
Yeah,
if you would
like
like to
with Into the
talk to
Harvest,
me.
we publish articles.
Yes.
And what you're going to be doing is more of a traditional blog
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
you're journaling and sharing, which I think a lot of people actually prefer. So I wouldn't say that it's going to be
Okay.
lower caliber, folks. It's just going to be a different
Okay. Yeah,
in what you get.
It's probably more what you get from me on the podcast, weirdly enough. That's my blog writing style is really just me writing down my words of my head. So, and that's also what I do here, which is why it's so great. Just the words coming out of my brain.
What is the address of your website?
AbigailWilsonAuthor.com.
AbigailWilsonAuthor.com. Again, we'll put that in the show notes as well, but just have that in your mind, and they can sign. I'll put the link to the sign up for your newsletter as well, your monthly newsletter, but that's also at the website, the family newsletter.
No, it's not. It's secret. Okay. So I will also put it out there for a limited time on this episode. I'll just send the link, and so you can just sign up via the link. But I also will be around on the Into the Harvest Instagram and Facebook. Now that I am not like a legit on staff type of person, I instead get to just be a good old fashioned follower. And I look forward to just being able to comment and share on there. So you can also catch me over there. So continue. We'll all be fans together and followers together and on mission together, which has been the great joy of this journey for me, is to be able to just be laboring side by side with so many people that I did not even know before I started this with you, Andrew. So it's been a real pleasure and honor to just get to meet so many different people all over the world via Into the Harvest Ministries, and just get to chat with you, Andrew, and all of the awesome people that we've gotten to interview has been an absolute delight, and I've loved every second of it. So I cannot wait to just be a fan that didn't have to do any work, that just gets to like consume all the goodness of Into the Harvest and be a financial supporter. Yes. And everyone can join me in that too. Those are my last words.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're starting a new chapter, but it's the same book, the same story. Yeah. And I am hoping that folks, that are interested will sign up for that monthly newsletter that you send out. I know we get that every month.
Yeah.
And I'm sure folks will want to stay connected. So we'll check back with one another hopefully later this year and maybe get another update. But why don't we wrap it up there, Abby?
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Andrew.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you next time.